What is up, everyone? It's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, coming at you live every Wednesday, 8 p.m., going over the market stats, the news you need to know about, think about buying, selling, or investing here in Northeastern Florida. And we're also doing a Q&A. So if you have any questions while you're watching it live or you're watching the replay, throw them in the comments below and I'll answer them live the best that I can. And if it is a replay that you're watching, I'll come back to the comments and answer, but it's a little bit easier because I can bring up stats and a whole bunch of stuff opposed to a couple of letters. I was in Greece the past couple weeks, so that's why we didn't do a live stream. Was flying one day and then flying both Wednesdays actually. And the internet's not good on those planes, and we had a baby to take care of in like a 12-hour flight. Not a ton of fun, but it's all good. Looks like we got Kevin here. Kevin, how you doing, my friend? Appreciate you reaching out. Coming in from Lakeland, Florida. Really appreciate that. Thank you for saying hello. This week we have a lot of news stories here for you. I'm going to go over a couple of data points I just want to touch on, and then we'll hop right into the news that we go on. So we start off with a national news story, or we try to, then go to a Florida news story, and then we go to a local news story. So kind of just bringing it down. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to take a look at just some data that I have. Boop, boop, boop. And if you've been a fan of the show, you've probably seen me bring up this chart many times. And this is something that, especially if you're looking to buy a home, you're looking to sell a home, there are ebbs and flows to our market, right? And in pricing in our market. And this is the historical seasonal pattern of Northeastern Florida and how pricing typically goes. So you see that starts here, the base is 100, goes up all the way to 114, and then goes back down to 107, and then this 107 becomes 100 for the next year, right? So it just continually shows that typical pattern. But as you can see here, and this is the latest numbers that we have, price growth is well below average this year, which reinforces why sellers need to be purposeful with go-to-market pricing strategies. So we haven't followed this historical pattern, right? It's been pretty flat, and that I think is evident for a ton of reasons. Whether it was the tariffs and the scared mindset that it put. I mean, really, everyone's talking about tariffs every single day, how it's going to affect life. And maybe it still will, right? We're still waiting on that. But I think that was a big thing here. Also, interest rates, of course, being another driving factor. And then also the economy, right? So we really haven't seen the same historical pattern. So if I were a betting man, which I'm not, don't gamble at all, I would imagine that this number would actually trend down further as we head into September, October. Because as you can see, we didn't get the peak here, but I imagine that we'll still see a relative slowdown. And some of the news stories that we cover here will kind of echo what I'm talking about. So I wanted to pull that up, and then let me pull up, I think I had Domus open here for this. It's one of these. See if I get this to run real quick. And this is something that I never break it out for you guys, and I guess this is something I wanted to do. Looks like this is all of Northeastern Florida, all the 5 counties. Looks like we're up 3% year over year, which, past couple months we've been down 3% year over year. So not a huge change in anything, but let's take a look at just St. Johns County. Now, when you look at St. Johns County, you're like, oh man, we're down a good bit. Down 3.5% to 485, really hovering around that 500 mark. In August of 2024, we were at 502. Now, the one thing this is for all properties. So you see single-family condos, townhomes. So I was just messing around with this the other day, and single-family homes, this actually surprised me. So this is the median sale price across all single-family homes in St. Johns County. It's $550,000, which is down 2.7% from this time last year. So what was interesting to me, though, is this data point right here. Now, if you reference the seasonality chart that I just showed you, you see that our peak in our year in pricing is typically during the summer, right? And that's what we saw for 1 month during the summer. In July, we hit 594, right? Whereas before that, it was 550. So that's a huge swing in a month, right? So I guarantee probably a multi-million-dollar property or several multi-million-dollar properties sold and pulled this number up. But the interesting thing is like that's something that typically happens, right? So you go to July 2024, 592, July of 2023, 586. So we're seeing this peak still, and it's that peak is still increasing, which I think is interesting. So you go back here to February 2024, and we had 495. So will we see this as, you know, we saw in the other chart, right? I closed it. Great. Okay. Well, the seasonality, we saw that prices tend to go down towards the end of the year, right? And that happens every single year. So will we see a further price decline than what we saw in February of 2024, right? That's very interesting to think of. Like, okay, well, we saw the peak. Will we see the valley, right? And we can almost guarantee we will see some type of valley. There will be some difference in pricing between summer and fall and then spring. But just really interesting. I wanted to point that out to you guys. Any questions about that, let me know. We're going to head on to the news stories that we got here. I think we got some good ones for you. So any questions about anything I cover here, throw them in the comments below. It helps me with engagement as well. Lets me share this message with other people. So if you like what I'm saying, do me a favor, share the show, like it, comment, do all the things. That would be pretty amazing. So we're going to start off with a CNBC article about mortgage demand. Now, past couple weeks, and I didn't cover the last 2 weeks because I was in Greece, mortgage demand has actually been increasing, which is something that we, in the real estate industry, we all want to see, right? In reality, our real estate industry has been down since 2022. Real estate has been in a recession, and it's not a recession of pricing, right? We're not seeing pricing go down, though many people want that to happen. We're seeing the number of transactions go down, and now it's a peak. We had 2021 where we had 6.5 million transactions nationwide, and now, like in 2024, we had the lowest amount of transactions than we saw in 30 years, right? And then 2025 is looking like it's going to be a little bit worse than 2024. So the question that I'm framing here, right, is how long do we expect this extremely low level of transactions to continue to happen? You also have, since 2022, 3 years of people who have been on the fence, right? And are like, you know what, I want to buy, but interest rates are too high, maybe I'll wait. They're keeping them on the fence, right? So if mortgage rates start to go down, and if you haven't been watching the news, mortgage rates have started to go down. The Fed's now saying they want to put a rate cut. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I hope this is still on the same thread. I don't know. This software seems to be messing up every single week. It's driving me insane. You might have heard me curse a little bit there, but I'm sure you guys have heard worse. But yeah, so let's go back to what I was talking about here. Mortgage demand from homebuyers pulls back after 4 weeks of gains. So applications to refinance a home increased 1%, which is good, but that's mostly amongst FHA and VA buyers. Applications for a mortgage to purchase a new home dropped 3% for the week and were 17% higher than the same week 1 year ago. And this is despite interest rates actually being lower at this point this time last year, right? So just with those little bits of information, not Nostradamus here, I'm not predicting the future, but we have been in a real estate recession in terms of transactions for a while. There is going to be an inflection point where those transactions start to climb back to more of like a normal level. When is that going to be? No one knows, but if we're technically bottoming out in terms of what we see in real estate transactions, then you could expect, all right, maybe next year's a slow year, but after that, you expect it to pick up. Or maybe next year is a big year because interest rates are going down dramatically. Hard to say, right? But what we know is that the Fed is planning to lower rates, right? How that affects mortgage rates is to be seen because it could actually, there's many people who believe that it could push mortgage rates up. So we'll stay up to date on all that. I know I threw a lot at you guys just there, a lot of stats and data. Any questions about it, throw it in the comments below. I hope you guys are still on from the previous live stream. It cut out for some reason. So not exactly sure what's going on. Oh, we got Pete Goodman here. How you doing, Pete? Good talking with you this week. See what you guys are looking to do. Well, hopefully that the problem was, Pete, maybe you just joined. I was about 8 minutes in, and then it just cut off, and then I was able to restart it again. So I don't know. I might have to redo this whole thing tomorrow or something, just so I can make sure I have one solid video opposed to two separate ones. But is what it is. But Pete, appreciate you being here. Kevin, appreciate you being here. Any questions about what I cover here, guys, let me know. We're going to go on to the next news story, which is going to be about, and something that we were kind of just touching on, right? And now, of course, now I'm a realtor. This is the Florida Realtors, so probably a little bit biased, you know. Let's take it with a grain of salt. Florida consumer sentiment at 3-year high. The latest confidence index from the from University of Florida found Floridians are feeling more optimistic about their personal finances and about the economy in the next year. So that's pretty much what you need to know. There's a whole bunch of data and statistics in here about how it, increased from this point and decreased in this point. But essentially, that's the gist of it. Is right there. Is that Floridians are feeling more optimistic about that. And now, you could probably point this to the news, right? The news talking about the Fed and what they're going to do and lowering the federal funds rate. You could point this to just in general Florida's political identity, right? Most of Florida it's a red state. It used to be a purple state. It's more of a red state today. So now they see the guy that they want in the White House. They see the guy that they want there. They believe that he's doing a better job than who was Joe Biden was last year. Who obviously, if we're a red state, it's a Democrat. So whatever you think about that, people in Florida in general feel better about the future of Florida. They feel better about the economy. They feel better about what they're getting paid. And in reality, Florida is changing in that way. Not as fast as we like, but people are starting to get paid a little bit more. And it's just because of what the world is, right? It's just more expensive to live these days. So I like seeing that. But I wonder, it says it's at a 3-year high, right? So presidency's 4 years. That's kind of what I think the driver is. What do you guys think? Do you actually think the economy is getting better? I mean, by all marks, right? You look at the past 6 months and the jobs reports and everything that has come out and the job report swings of 100 to 200,000 jobs a month, you would think that it's not as good, right? But Floridians are feeling different about it. Now, there are other indicators here in Florida, such as our unemployment rate and our economy being very strong here, that make us different in a lot of areas, right? So what do you guys think about that? Really like to know, just so I'm not in an echo chamber here, let me know what you guys think. So I'm going to go on to the next news story here. And this one's just kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys like this kind of stuff. I do. I love some beautiful architecture. But Florida's only private home designed by Frank Lloyd Wright is officially on the market. Built in 1954, the Spring House is located on the outskirts of Tallahassee. The 2,040 square foot residence, a rare example of the renowned architect's hemicycle design. So it's for oh my God, these freaking ads. I need Depends now. That's what I'm getting ads for. Oh my gosh. 2.1 million. It's hilarious that I'm on a live stream. I get ad for Depends. 2.1 million, 3-bedroom, 2-bath acres, if I remember correctly reading through this. But Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the most famous architects ever. They pull up the listing here. Let's see. Kind of looks like a spaceship a little bit. I like the floors. I like the natural light. What do you guys think about this house? I don't know about 2.1 million. I mean, obviously it's a Frank Lloyd Wright house, but I looked on Zillow in the surrounding area, and most of the houses are like 200, 300,000. So I don't know. You got to be a big fan of it. My father-in-law might like this, but I don't know. Most people will. So yeah, we'll hop on to the next news story here, guys. Let's see. This is kind of a cool one as we talk about Jacksonville's changing, right? They got a Four Seasons coming to the riverfront in Jacksonville. They're redoing the stadium. They're talking about, they're bringing the Jacksonville Armada, so a soccer team. There's talks of the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, the owner of that, buying the Tampa Bay Rays, right? So that might move to Jacksonville. A whole bunch of interesting things that are going on in the downtown. But this is something that I think this is going to be kind of cool. Publix to open store in downtown Jacksonville as part of a mixed-use high-rise. New 31,000 square foot store will be located at 119 West Beaver Street. So that's very interesting. The release states the new location will anchor Pearl Square, a walkable multi-billion-dollar mixed-use neighborhood currently under construction. By putting one downtown, people will be able to get it more easily. So they're just talking about groceries. But it's going to be a mixed-use building that will also include a 15-story residential tower with approximately 250 apartments integrated with parking at 400 spaces. And, I'm not even showing my screen. Sorry about that, guys. But this is what it's going to look like. I make that klutz mistake all the time. But that's something interesting for downtown Jacksonville, right? Because in reality, if you're a local here, you know it. Most people don't hang out in downtown. Most people don't want to live in downtown Jacksonville. There's just not much going on. You think of the downtown of a city, and Jacksonville is not it, right? But that is changing, right? And some of the prices that you see in downtown Jacksonville, I mean, obviously are going to be extremely cheap when you're comparing it to the beaches or, Avondale and Jacksonville, Riverside, which are areas like really the suburbs just outside of the downtown of Jacksonville, which are beautiful. But now Jacksonville is kind of coming onto its own thing. So if you are looking to buy an investment or buy a property that you're like, hey, I want this long term to grow in value, downtown Jacksonville is probably going to be a good spot. I looked into it, but obviously, if I were to buy a house out there, I'd have to drive to St. Augustine all the time. We looked in Avondale, matter of fact. Me and my wife love Avondale. We looked in Avondale, and we were just like, as much as we looked at the pricing and everything, and we love it. Love that little neighborhood, but I got to drive to St. Augustine every day, and that's 50 minutes. I'm not doing that. So, either way, guys, any questions on that, let me know. I am talking a little bit lower. My wife has been sick the past couple days. My baby got sick for the past couple days, so she's sleeping in the room over here. So lowering my tone a little bit. My wife, I get in a lot of trouble. I'm very loud, apparently. Didn't realize that my whole life, but now I am. So there's that. Let's go ahead and check out this next news story. All right, so St. Johns County allocates funds to enhance Night of Lights, tackle mobility concerns. So this is actually really interesting. St. Augustine receives $850,000 from St. Johns County for Nights of Lights improvements. City plans to address mobility issues with shuttles and parking changes. It's a ton of money for shuttles and parking changes. But this is something that I really want to get out here to my locals, because most locals don't know about this, and the biggest problem here is that, like, when it comes down to these events, people that work downtown, that are the bartenders, the servers, the managers, all the people that work in the stores, have nowhere to park, right? The parking garage is $20 a day. In this article, they're talking about raising it to $40, right? So it doesn't necessarily make sense if you make $150, $200 a night to go down and spend $40 on parking. It's kind of insane. You'll make probably $300 a night as a server, bartender, I imagine, downtown during the Nights of Lights. But either way, doesn't exactly make sense, and a lot of times it's full. St. Augustine also shortened Nights of Lights to 58 days. It's now going from the second week in November to the second week in January, which it used to run all the way through January, which I will die on this hill. This is the stupidest thing St. Augustine's ever done. Like, so stupid. Our tourism industry thrives during that time. Is it a pain in the ass? 100%. But all the local businesses and all the people that live and work here locally, a lot of them depend, especially in that downtown area, on this event every single year. The reason they shortened it, and this makes no logical sense. The reason they shortened it is because there's traffic and congestion concerns during Nights of Lights. But when is that, right? It's when everyone's off. Like when most kids are off school, it's from it's the last 2 weeks of the year. So essentially from all the holiday season through New Year's. So that's when the congestion's the worst. So shortening it in January doesn't do anything aside from hurt the local businesses there. And also, aside from that, that's when I go downtown. That's when the locals go downtown, because we can enjoy our city then, right? I don't go in December unless I have a friend in town. They're like, oh, we want to go down. I'll stomach it and go downtown. But in general, I don't go downtown because it's just too much, right? So when they shorten it in January, they're going to cause the locals to now force that time to where they got to go in this 2-week, 11-day period technically, which is the stupidest thing. So there's another article that came out here. Let me see if I can find it quick. I just read it right before I hopped on here. The St. John Citizen, great local newsletter here, put out this article right here. St. Johns County Commissioner slams St. Augustine's decision to trim Nights of Lights, calls for a reversal. And, maybe I just really agree with her, right? Because this is how I feel. We did not get complaints in January. January was not a problem. So by shortening it in January, it took away a lot of funding. It hurt a lot of businesses. There were a number of events planned in January. We had a 3-day MLK holiday weekend. Hotels were booked. Weddings were planned. There was absolutely no reason to shorten Nights of Lights in January when January was never the problem. And that's the truth, right? Like I don't know how the city of St. Augustine got to that. Like it makes no sense. It boggles the mind. I do not get it. So she's asking for them to reverse that, and I think they should 100% because it's nonsensical. It makes no sense at all. So the city of St. Augustine made that decision. St. Johns County is saying like, hey, we're giving you money. You guys should extend it because this makes no sense. And I agree. It makes no sense. Let's see. We got John here. Florida, Frank Lloyd Wright houses are like prime memorabilia and always are going to be even if they aren't all livable or in funky locations. 100% they are. I mean, it's a collector's item, right? Just like people collected Derek Jeter rookie card, right? Especially with real estate and some people that are extremely wealthy, it would probably go for $2 million, right? One of a kind housing. I sent it to my father-in-law because he's an architect and he obviously loves architecture. So I sent it over to him. He hasn't responded to me yet because I just sent it about an hour ago. But we were talking about falling water, and apparently falling water, which if you've seen any of Frank Lloyd Wright's stuff, beautiful, beautiful home built pretty much over a waterfall. They had some serious structural issues, and it's apparently going to cost like $500,000 or something like that to fix because when he designed it, and this is what my father-in-law said, for the aesthetic purpose of it, like essentially the joists were made. If they were made the way the engineering was supposed to be designed for, they'd have been too thick and it would have thrown off everything. So he just made a whole bunch of little tiny ones, and those are starting to fail. I'm not exactly sure if that's the truth or not, but I agree, John. It 100%. Like, will they get around $2 million? I don't know. Maybe that's a reach, but someone's definitely going to buy it in the multi-millions just because it's Frank Lloyd Wright. So beautiful places he makes, beautiful houses. All right, we'll go on to the next. My terrible Trump impression. We'll go on to the next news story here, guys. So this is going to deal, especially if you're in Silverleaf, if you're in Nocatee, you want to make sure that you know what's going on here, or if you're planning on moving to those areas. Growing so fast, hundreds of students to be reassigned to St. Johns County School. St. Johns County soon opens new schools. So parents have to be aware that some of the kids that are going to, Pine Island, for example, Pine Island Academy in Nocatee, they're going to be rerouted to a new school. That's a tough adjustment for a lot of kids, so parents aren't necessarily happy about it, but at the end of the day, it means less crowding in the classrooms, which in general should give your kid a better education. So we got 2 new K-8 schools opening. One is in Nocatee and one is in Silverleaf. And that's exactly what it's saying in here. Pine Island Academy will hit the hardest, with hundreds of students expected to move to the new Nocatee school as part of a school district-wide effort to relieve overcrowding. And essentially, this is what everyone's saying. We're just growing so fast and overcrowded so fast, we have to continue building schools and move people. So you're going to have 2 people that are going to say, oh, this is awful. I can't believe this. I don't want my kids to leave the school. And then you're going to have the people who be like, hey, you know what? I get it. I want my kid to have a good education. I want them to have a smaller class size. But I think the people that go to Pine Island, this is where it's a little tricky. Pine Island Academy is one of the best academies, which is an elementary middle school in the entire area. People really want their kids to go to that school. Well, you could almost guarantee that the new school in Nocatee, the new school in Silverleaf are going to be A-rated schools, right? But it's still going to be new. They still got to figure things out. There's going to be a whole bunch of logistical things that they're going to have to figure out for the school and transportation and just even opening a new school and everything that goes with that and the staffing and all that. I'm sure there's going to be hiccups, right? And that's the difficult situation, right? You're going from like, hey, I know this school is great, to like, hey, I know this school has the potential to be great, but we won't know, right? And that's probably the toughest thing for most parents and most students. So it's not going to change, right? Northeastern Florida seems to be growing rapidly still. They just said it here, expecting 650,000 people living in St. Johns County by 2050. So the plan that I saw a couple years ago, and I'm sure it's still in the double digits, but I think they've opened 4 schools in the last couple years. They've got these 2 coming, and I think it was 17 schools over the next 20 years. So we got another 13 schools or so for them to build. So we'll of course stay on top of everything here, guys, but if you do have kids, it's probably going to be a change, especially if you're looking in a certain neighborhood in Nocatee or Silverleaf. They're going to get moved around come next school year. So all right, guys, I got one more news story. Any questions, let me know. This is actually one that the headline reads a lot better than it actually is, but let's see if I can actually get it pull up. That's the first part. Okay. Florida insurance policies flood insurance policies in St. Augustine could be cheaper for St. Augustine homeowners. So, the city now qualifies as Class 4 in the National Flood Insurance Program, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The designation will afford homeowners a 30% discount on flood insurance premiums in most NFIP policies issued or renewed on or after April 1st, 2026. So 30%, you're like, man, that's awesome, right? That's a 5 percentage points more than the discount previously offered when the city was rated Class 5, which was 25%. So, like, I think the city put it on their page, like, hey, we're going to be reducing, you're going to get a discount of 30%. But in reality, it's like we had the discount of 25%. So it's just an additional 5, which, like, hey, any relief is wanted. But, marketing, packaging, headlines, news, not exactly what you want to hear. I will say that St. Augustine, the city of St. Augustine, is trying to make improvements. They've actually, and good or bad, I don't know, I'm not a civil engineer, but they've actually talked about buying 2 properties, well, not buying, but taking the properties through eminent domain so that they can build a flood wall throughout the back of them. Is that a good thing? Or you could have 2 schools of thought on that, right? You have people who are like, hey, this is the property I bought. You're not kicking me out of here, right? And then you have the people like, hey, well, you put up a flood wall, it serves the greater good of the community. What's the right answer? Hard to say. But it does seem that they are making improvements. And if they do have that flood wall, maybe the potential for more, maybe go from Class 4 to a level 4 to a level 3. Maybe that gives us a 40% discount in our flood insurance policies. Any discount is something that we're willing to take, right? So, I don't know. Thought that was interesting, guys. Hope you did. That is the last news. Let me just make sure. That's the last news story I got here for you this week. Going to be putting out. I'm going to put out more content, guys. We're going into the slower season of the year, right? So I can actually sit down and kind of plan my thoughts a little bit. Running a gun and hunting has been busy for me. So, guys, if you need anything, reach out to me directly. Call, text, or email. I'm here for you. Pete, Kevin, John, really appreciate you guys and your comments down here. Until next week, guys. I'll see you later.